Even the greatest heroes, no matter their power, can eventually meet their doom. Let us speculate on Superman's bane, Doomsday. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Speculative Wildlife Research Center. Doomsday is an artificial monstrosity from DC Comics, most famous for having killed Superman, back when superhero deaths were still a big deal. And with the new movie having just come out, what better time to speculate on its biology? Once more, a lot of info here was courtesy of the book DC Comics, Anatomy of a Metahuman, which I'd recommend if you're interested in superpower speculation. And now, without further ado, let's get started! It's hard to say we don't live in a world of gods and monsters. It seems for as many heroes our world has met, many catastrophes have arisen to test their mettle, and who knows how long they will be enough to keep us safe. Earlier this month, an unknown organism arrived on our planet, and immediately began a rampage the human cost of which is incalculable. While the combined efforts of Earth's protectors were seemingly fruitless, in the end, Superman was able to take the creature out. The study of this organism was rather hard to conduct, and for good reasons. All we have to go off of is what little we could gather from the organism during an extremely short window of opportunity, as well as limited information obtained from individual samples. At least, the files provided by Superman give us one thing. This organism is not natural, not in any sense of the word. While its base anatomy is Kryptonian, it has been altered by an engineered bioweapon, named in these files as TMS-18, or the Doomsday Virus. It was tailor-made to infect Kryptonians and no other organism, with the virus having been originally developed through the use of a Kryptonian child's cell line. If anything, we can now extrapolate based on what we already know about Kryptonian biology, even if it's only based on a single living specimen. From what we've been able to determine, the infection cycle begins when the virus attacks the Kryptonian's bloodstream, as opposed to specific organs, thus allowing it to quickly spread throughout the organism. Bloodstream here is intended to refer to the Kryptonian inner fluid system. Once again, you'll understand, despite the biological and physiological differences, we are using analogous terms for the sake of simplicity. Infection will begin at the cellular level, where the virus will insert its own genetic material into the cell in order to reproduce. However, being an engineered virus, it will also alter the transcription profile of the cell, repurposing its natural mechanisms into something else, intended to transform the host into a living weapon. This will induce the development of a hard layer around the cellular membrane, composed of quickly hardening proteins that form a hard lattice around the cell. Reasonably, this will cancel out the known Newtonian properties of healthy Kryptonian cells, causing them to be in a permanent hardened state and impeding the host's finer motor skills. As infection advances, this lattice will begin covering more and more cells, tissues, and organs, forming a somewhat flexible but extremely durable layer around the entire body. Research from viruses found in our world hint at a certain degree of memory, so to speak, an alteration to their epigenetic markers in response to previously experienced pressures or infective cycles. We observed the same thing in this virus, which will keep track of toxins or environmental conditions it has encountered before, and activate an increased defensive response against these same conditions in the future. The virus will, similarly, activate an increased production of hardening fibers in areas that have suffered severe trauma and injuries in previous hosts. This may account for the reason the observed individual had such heavy protection around its neck, spine, and various articulations. The fiber mesh around these areas was much harder and thicker, and upon inspection was revealed to be much closer in composition to the bone of Kryptonians than to their skin. This phenomenon is particularly noticeable when the adverse conditions encountered have resulted in the termination of its host, therefore halting its infective cycle and forcing the virus to adapt in order to make its host even more durable so as to avoid its death. While a reasonable adaptation in a natural virus, the engineered nature of TMS-18 betrays the evil intent of its creator, as it gives rise to a living weapon that simply keeps coming back from anything and everything. Aside from the most noticeable alterations to the Kryptonians' biology, there is also the matter of the Kryptonians' energy collection system, which will be modified to bypass many of its functions. For instance, the energy system will not be used to heat the infected's body, since heat would be detrimental to the virus, and so some of the abilities of Kryptonians, such as those that translate into I-beams in our planet, are non-existent in the infected individual. Higher cognitive functions will also be bypassed, as will many non-essential survival mechanisms, which limit the infected's ability to function as a sapient being or almost as a living being altogether. Part of the energy absorbed by the infected will be stored, allowing survival without food or oxygen and entering long stasis periods in response to adverse conditions. But most of it will be directed towards the infected's transformation, as well as its muscle tissue. Higher amounts of energy being directed towards muscle activation and contraction will give the infected physical abilities on par with those of a Kryptonian found on our planet. Examination of the infected's remains revealed the muscle fibers were altered as well, making them grow and twist into coils, this shape preventing tearing and thus giving the individual a greater degree of physical strength. Finally, part of the stored energy will be used to induce quick tissue regeneration in the event of injuries. But the increased speed of this process will lead to the generation of tissue being much more chaotic and less structured than would be natural, leading to the formation of fibrosis, excessive, anomalous tissue formed in the wound. Aside from the adaptive abilities detailed before, this process will lead to the formation of denser armor in injured areas, turning any non-lethal injuries into an asset to the infected. While the infected was eventually neutralized, it came at a great cost to our savior. But, despite initial concerns regarding Superman's condition, we now expect him to make a full recovery in no time. We regret to inform, however, that the infected's body, as well as most samples left, seem to have disappeared from our facilities. We really want to believe there is an explanation to this. Perhaps the body dissolved as a result of the virus's activity and, in the absence of further hosts, the threat it represents has been eliminated. If the body was, instead, stolen by a governmental agency, as we believe it was, we shudder to imagine the potential harm that might come from research into its properties. And that's it for Speculative Biology look into This is Doomsday. And this suggestion got quite a bit of love after the Superman episode. Were you in a hurry to see him die? It's okay, I'm not judging. This was a really fun episode to work out, with Doomsday being not only an artificially created being, but one that has such fascinating properties as well. To boot, Doomsday was constantly cloned in order to turn him into a living weapon, making him immune to whatever had killed the previous version, and it eventually ran off on its own, still resurrecting every time he died, and still retaining his adaptive invulnerability to whatever had killed him before. Add to that the fact that it's capable of infecting other organisms, most noticeably Superman. And with the fact that it was canonically created from a Kryptonian child, the idea of Doomsday being the product of a viral infection soon began taking shape. After all, This allowed us to incorporate a ton of his properties that fell in with this model really nicely, especially now that we've started warming up to making artificial beings on the channel. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and please let me know what other supervillains from the comics you'd like to see reimagined on our channel. As always, here's a big thank you to everyone who wanted to see this episode. Your continued support and ideas really keep the channel going. And also, thank you to our researchers and research associates who support us through Patreon and YouTube memberships, as well as helping us a lot in getting this episode to its final form. Remember, if you want to support the channel, you can join in as well. It would be greatly appreciated. And you'd get some nice perks too, like seeing all of our creatures and videos ahead of time, and participating in the back and forth that allows all of these episodes to achieve their full potential. Or you can also like, subscribe, or write a comment telling me which of the heroes we've met on the channel has a shot at fighting Doomsday. Aside, of course, from Soups himself. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time on the Speculative Wildlife Research Center. Of course I had to lie. We don't want anyone knowing that Earth's champion might be gone for good. If this becomes known, who knows who or what might make their move into our planet. We've known for a while that there are other beings eyeing this place, and until we know what we will do about this, Superman's passing cannot become public knowledge. You understand?